Hey guys, this is Nathan and welcome to the Gaming 4. Today in this Unturned map review, we're going to be covering a map called Damnation. Now this map is actually very popular on the Steam Workshop, and I think currently it has 5 out of 5 stars, so obviously we don't necessarily need to do a review on it to get the word out about it, but we still wanted to review it anyway for you guys and give you hopefully an accurate representation of where this map was really good and maybe how it could have been improved. So anyway guys, let's start with some of the strengths of this map and then we'll move on to some of the weaknesses. So one of the main strengths of this map was how challenging it was. It was challenging enough to keep the survival interesting, but at the same time making it easy enough so you're not getting spawn killed or you're dying pointlessly in situations that you cannot survive in. So there's a couple of reasons that this challenge was actually about perfect. First of all, the amount of food was just a little bit under what you would normally need, so maybe a potential tweak could be adding just a little bit. Also related to that is the amount of clothing, which was pretty good as well, though it would have been great to see some more clothing in certain areas of the map that kind of just lacked some, whereas others had a little bit too much for what you needed, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but the combination of those two made surviving quite challenging and really enjoyable actually. Something else that related to the challenge was the difficulty of the zombies, and they were definitely ramped up a little bit. Some of the zombies did a lot of damage and were very hard to kill, but this actually helped in certain ways because it made zombie fights a little bit more challenging, and it also made certain areas of the map way harder to raid and get good resources out of. Also a lot more rewarding and satisfying when you are in fact able to win those zombie fights and raid the good gear out of those areas. So overall, I thought it was balanced pretty well in terms of the difficulty. Of course, there's a lot of other things that add to that. Another thing that was really good about this map is the amount of ammo that was provided for the survivors. Now, a lot of maps have this issue where they provide lots of guns and maybe lots of clips, but they don't provide the ammo boxes to refill those and consistently use those. Now, this map actually added quite a bit of ammo and almost had the opposite issue. Guns were a little bit rare, which was not necessarily a bad thing in this case, because at least when you get a gun, you have plenty of ammo to use it. It's always the worst thing when you find a really cool gun, maybe, you know, something real dangerous like a shadow stalker or even a sniper, but you never have the ammo to use it consistently. So it just sort of sits in your inventory or storage and you never really benefit from having it. Well, this map actually provides plenty of ammo to use your guns to the point that you actually get to use them when normally raiding and fighting off other players, potentially in a PvP situation as well. So very good amount of ammo. I wish more maps would add a lot more ammo to every part of the map really. Something else that was actually really impressive about this map is that it was a large map and it actually had tons of locations. There was probably 100 plus, that's what it boasted on the Steam page, and I would believe it actually. There's a ton of locations, small, large, different sizes, and all of them are pretty well detailed actually, and that's where it got a lot of its points from. The detailing was very good in most of the areas, but it was kind of inconsistent. Certain areas were lacking some detail, such as apartments, and because of that, you know, there's just a bit of variation in terms of the detailing, but overall it was very good. There's a lot of compound objects, very impressive, good looking areas of the map. In terms of the natural resources provided in the map, there was actually a decent amount of berries, wild animals, and metal nodes. I didn't really notice too many or too much farming gear, but I think you could have made do because there's also definitely plenty of crafting materials. So if you did need to make the fertilizer and whatnot to grow and harvest the wild vegetables or whatever you found from raiding, you could definitely do so. So a natural part of survival was definitely an option in terms of this map. There's also tons of space to do that as well because it is a large map. So in terms of natural resources, very good overall. And lastly, one of the last really good things of this map is that there were some newer features incorporated into that, including some dev kit effects. There was definitely a lot of materials and extra clutter on the ground that can only be really added through the dev kit, but also there was NPCs included, and most of them provided very good vendors. There's one or two that were kind of like plot storyline based, but in terms of quests, I don't think there were any main quests that were spread throughout the entire map. So of course more can be added there, but it's just good to have those features in the map in the first place. Alright, so that's pretty much it for the strength of this map. Obviously it did very well overall. 86 points out of 100 is definitely a very good score, plus it got 5 out of 5 stars on the Steam Workshop, so it's definitely worth checking out. So in terms of the weaknesses, one of the first things that you kind of notice is that there's hardly any vehicles to be found. Now this is somewhat of an issue because it is a large map and it's very important to be able to travel around the entire map, not by foot, because obviously that's super tedious and players don't want to do that. Now the weird thing is there's plenty of vehicle maintenance gear, so once you get a vehicle, you do get to hold on to it, upgrade it, maintain it. That part is not really an issue, but definitely consider adding more vehicle spawns, mostly cars, throughout the entire map. Now I know earlier I mentioned having a lot of ammo for weapons. Even though there were some scarce amount of weapons, the the ammo was really good. But something else that was completely missing from this map was attachments for those weapons. Something else that's really satisfying is to find a weapon you enjoy and then kit it with a bunch of attachments that makes it even better than the base weapon itself. So adding those attachments, mixing those in with your spawn table, something, just add them in there. We didn't find any, and I feel like that's a huge amount of item spawns that are just missing from your map. They're pretty important, so if you're gonna have guns, make sure you have the attachments for them, even if they're rare. Speaking of missing types of item spawns, this map did also include at least one dead zone. I think there were actually a couple, and something that was completely missing from the map was the anti-dead zone gear, such as the full biohazard suit or gas masks and filters. So we did not find anything when playing through this map. We did play this map on 2 separate occasions for a couple hours each, so we combed over like most of the map, like 99% of it, and we didn't find anything. So if you're going to include dead zones, make sure you include anti-dead zone gear. I don't think we even found that many vaccines, because I know a lot of people like to do the alternative solution where they vaccine rush, they just stock up a bunch and keep using them while they're in there. That's a viable strategy, but you need to have the vaccine spawns to be able to do that as well. So consider adding one or both of those types of items just to balance out those dead zones. Relating to the dead zones, there were also quite a few areas in the map that did not have any gear or any good gear, and because of that, they were not worth visiting. Now this especially includes the dead zone. Generally, the dead zones are supposed to be the most valuable areas of the map because they are the hardest to get to. They require special gear that's usually harder to find, and unfortunately, the dead zone in this map was really not worth visiting. It was a nuclear power plant, so that part was pretty cool and it was detailed pretty well, but there was really nothing for the users to get out of it. There was nothing in the plant that made it worth going into. Similarly, there were some really cool areas of the map that were really awesome, but they didn't have any item spawns that were actually worth picking up. A lot of them didn't even have basic crafting materials. So when you make those cool areas of the map, make sure they're worth visiting. And a couple other ways to do that, besides just providing good item spawns, is to tie it into the quest or plot line if you have one in the first place, so that the player actually is forced to go to that area to complete the quest. That's an alternate way of doing it besides just giving them good item spawns. Now, one of the largest issues I had with this map had to have been the landscape. In general, the landscape was actually pretty good. I'm pretty sure it wasn't made with the dev kit, but certain areas were quite detailed, and it was like a rolling hills kind of landscape, which was kind of unusual for a barren landscape. Usually people do desert type themes, but this one seemed like a desert, but it was very mountainous and hilly, and that kept it pretty decently interesting. Now, one issue I had with it was he did include caves, but his cave systems were utter trash. They were garbage, and the reason they were garbage, one simple reason, is because he didn't use dev kit hull volumes. Now, I'm not really sure why, because I'm pretty sure, actually I guarantee he used dev kit in other places of the map. He should have just used a freaking hull volume and made a cave system just go under the ground. So most of his cave systems were comprised of boulders just placed on top of the ground to create like a physical cave system, but that's really overcomplicating things, so consider changing that. I know it would be pretty, like, it would take some work to change it. I've made plenty of cave systems myself, but it's definitely doable, and it would increase the quality of those cave systems 100,000,000%, so consider doing that. Also, there's some other areas of the map where boulders were just included into the landscape, and it just made it really rough and uneven for no apparent reason. I don't think there was anything underground in those areas, and I looked for entrances of caves, and there was just nothing there. So consider getting rid of those. It'll help the landscape be just a little bit easier to traverse, and it'll make a bit more sense. It won't bait players into thinking that you've got a cave system or something hidden underneath that when there's really nothing there. The last issue I had with the map, it was kind of a weird issue, to be honest. We've never run into it before, but it was the amount of mega zombie spawns that were included throughout the, like, almost every location. And the issue with this is it makes it really hard for beginner survivors to even like touch those locations at all. And because we're playing on a server setting, the mega zombie was able to spawn into those multiple locations as soon as we left the navigation. Normally in survival, once you find it at a military base, you know it's going to be there until you log off and log back into the map. In a server setting, it's not necessarily like that. You can run into it multiple times at different locations in the same playthrough. So consider changing that, maybe reduce the number of mega zombie spawns to just some of the important military or dead zone areas to where players are expecting it. Like, we'd randomly just find mega zombies inside buildings just in the middle of a city, and it's just like a normal shop and there's a mega zombie there. Well, that's kind of unnecessary. It actually lowers the importance of a mega zombie, because if you have that many of them, it makes them less valuable. It's kind of a supply demand. Make the supply low so that the demand is high to find one. That's generally the premise you should be using for anything valuable in any game. So besides that, this map was actually pretty good. There's obviously some pretty big issues with parts of it, and other other parts were very well done, especially the challenge and the balancing of the difficulty. I quite enjoyed it. So definitely for other map makers out there, try to hit that mark of making the map challenging but not too challenging. Give the players enough good gear to overcome the challenge that you throw at them. Obviously have different tiers of difficulty and valuable resources that you get from different areas. That really helps and adds to the challenge, and it makes the game more balanced in a certain sort of way. So anyway guys, if you want to check out the map, of course there'll be a link to it in the description below. This map did score 86 out of 100, so it's worth checking out. Also, I know it's been a while since we've done a map review. This is the first one getting back into it. We're almost to the end of our map review list. We've got 3 maps left, I think. So hopefully over the next 3 weeks, I'll get those last map reviews out for you guys. I'm not sure we're going to open the list back up when we've cleared out the list that we've got, but I'll consider that in the future. These map reviews are not necessarily the easiest to make, but they're quite enjoyable, and I know you guys enjoy them as well. So we'll consider making some more of these in the future. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and please subscribe if you want to see some more. I will see you all later.